It's official, Gen Z are not okay. A recent survey in 44 countries discovered that nearly half of Gen Z live paycheck to paycheck, while almost half need side jobs. Why exactly is Gen Z broke? And is avocado toast really the explanation? Imagine this frustration. Making over 3 times the federal minimum wage, yet still unable to afford basic living. Gen Z feels like it's aging badly, becoming the brokest generation. Mortgage rates edge toward 8%, wages slide downward, and taxes climb relentlessly, suffocating everyday existence. Boomers often cannot relate. They remember buying Cadillacs on $30,000 salaries while still qualifying for homes. Gen Z asks why no one admits life was easier decades ago. Instead, we're told to cope, while the consequences of their economic choices land directly on younger shoulders. A full working week no longer guarantees stability. Many clock 40 hours, 5 days a week, yet remain unable to live independently. That reality fuels despair. It feels like the future is only darkness, and building anything meaningful seems impossible under constant financial pressure. Studies reinforce this bleak outlook. Research shows Gen Z are least likely to save or plan financially for the future. At the same time, survey data highlights their lack of hope. The struggle raises questions. Lifestyle excess, or an unforgiving economic structure shaping their reality? Experts point towards systemic change. Decades ago, governments provided public housing, subsidized healthcare, and affordable education, easing costs for families. Over time, those supports disappeared. Privatization replaced public provision, and expenses skyrocketed. What older generations managed comfortably became increasingly unattainable, reshaping the conditions in which younger people now live. The numbers appear deceptive. On average, a 25-year-old Gen Zer earns more annually than baby boomers did at the same age. But the comparison ignores inflation and soaring living expenses. Measuring income without measuring costs misleads, creating the impression of wealth when the opposite is true. Looking back 50 or 60 years, societies were structured differently. Collective services kept essentials affordable, from housing to healthcare. That landscape has eroded, leaving individuals exposed to relentless costs. Understanding this historical shift is crucial to grasping why today's young adults, despite higher incomes, still feel undeniably broke. That's now all been shifted into the private sector, where people face price gouging because no alternatives exist. In major cities like London, young people spend staggering amounts on rent, sometimes half their entire income, just to keep a roof over their heads, leaving little space for anything else. Look at public services once provided freely. Higher education in the UK and many other countries carried no tuition cost. Healthcare, education, transport, all benefited from significant support. But over the years, these services were slashed, underfunded, and increasingly privatized, stripping away essential protections generations once relied upon. Rail networks, public utilities, and similar services were previously nationalized and affordable. Now they are owned privately, with prices rising sharply. Young people feel the brunt as shareholders extract profits at their expense. Everyday living costs have spiraled, reshaping budgets and eliminating security for younger generations. An economic expert Max explains another layer. Beyond rising costs and constant uncertainty about the future, unexpected shocks dominate the Gen Z experience. COVID, for example, disrupted education, employment, and stability in unprecedented ways. These unforeseen events compound financial stress, leaving young people navigating a world far more fragile than before. COVID, I would argue, devastated everyone, not only Gen Z but also women and millennials. Beyond the pandemic, layers of distraction emerged. Economic turbulence, wars, rising energy costs, and looming fears of new plagues. These shocks leave Gen Z scrambling, uncertain about decisions, and unsure where stability can be found. Right now, the economic landscape still feels unstable, yet new perspectives emerge. Gen Z face unique financial struggles unlike those of earlier generations. Surveys reveal that 65% believe they are starting further behind financially, carrying heavier burdens than those who came before, despite working under supposedly greater opportunity. Evelyn, a digital content creator, identifies structural forces behind these challenges. Education costs, medical expenses, and asset prices, including housing and cars, have risen at far faster rates than salaries. What earlier generations managed with ease, today's youth cannot realistically access, creating a widening gap between income growth and the essential costs of living. Yet there is another layer to consider. Gen Z spend differently, shaped heavily by social media's influence. Decades ago, people aspired to match their wealthiest neighbor or relative. Today, global online networks showcase carefully curated lives, driving endless comparison. These images fuel rising wants, pushing spending far beyond earlier norms. Social media feeds not only desires but also relentless consumption cycles. Marketing strategies have advanced dramatically targeting users with precision and intensity. Every scroll, click, and video becomes a prompt to buy, to upgrade, to keep pace with unattainable lifestyles. The result is mounting pressure, debt, and financial insecurity. You know how it works now. You sit in pajamas, open your phone, and with a few taps you're spending money you didn't plan. Targeted ads hit you instantly, pushing products you don't need. One impulse spree later, and your budget is completely wrecked. People keep saying Gen Z is broke because of avocado toast, fancy coffees, or wasted hours online. They call Gen Z lazy, unwilling to work. That's not the full picture of their struggle, no matter how often critics repeat it. You want a decent living, you just can't move out of your parents' house. They could afford homes and Cadillacs on salaries like $30,000. You can't even cover rent without sinking into debt. The world you inherited costs more but gives you far less. Here are the facts. On graduation, you're burdened with more than $20,000 in student debt, 13% higher than millennials. It takes you 21 years to pay it off. That means you'll still be making loan payments in your 40s, long after finishing school. Compare it with the past. In 1970, tuition cost only $394 a year. That's what your grandparents paid. Now you're told you're lazy or entitled, waiting for handouts. But you and I know the truth. You just want fairness, not charity. Gen Z is one of the hardest working generations. Studies show 76% take full responsibility for their careers, while over 50% are willing to work nights and weekends for higher pay. You aren't lazy. You're sacrificing time and energy, often without meaningful reward. But here's the key difference. You speak openly about working endless hours and still being underpaid. Critics joke about avocado toast, as though skipping lattes could erase debt. But you know stopping avocado toast won't magically clear $20,000 in loans or buy you an affordable house. Compared to earlier generations, you're more inclined to spend rather than save. In places like India, families saved first and spent later. Today, temptation surrounds you. Targeted ads, curated lifestyles, endless wants. Your generation struggles to save, not from weakness, but because systems push constant consumption. The solution isn't eliminating happiness. Yes, budget for avocado toast and lattes, because otherwise what are you working for? But know your limits. You need to save and invest first, then spend what remains. That mindset shift matters, balancing enjoyment now with security for the future. And here's the harder truth: you must learn when to stop. You need to decide how much validation you seek online and how far you'll go chasing it. Reality doesn't come from likes or ads. Reality comes from building stability that no algorithm can undermine. I'm relieved, honestly, that we're still allowed lattes and avocado toast. But the bigger question remains: why can't you afford rent or housing, even while working so hard? That's not about coffee. It's about broken structures making independence almost impossible for an entire generation like yours. We've seen an extreme transformation in how goods and services reach you. Algorithms now target ads precisely, and credit cards are everywhere. Your consumption habits are shaped differently than before. But the truth is, only a minority can actually swipe endlessly on Amazon without consequence. It's not just a lack of houses being built. Housing has been financialized. Banks, deregulated, now issue huge amounts of credit through mortgages. Debt to GDP ratios have risen sharply, driven heavily by residential loans. That inflates markets, encouraging bidding wars, while prices climb far above realistic incomes. Now we face 30-year mortgages people struggle to repay, sometimes into retirement. Without rent controls or large-scale social housing, you're spending 30, 40, even 50% of income just on rent. If you don't inherit money from parents, saving for ownership becomes practically impossible. Housing costs fuel anger among you. Many remain with parents not from choice but necessity. And it's not your fault. A 2023 US survey even found some employers avoiding Gen Z entirely, labeling you lazy and entitled. But is that perception fair or distorted? Think of it this way. A goalkeeper saves 100 shots but lets in one goal. What do people remember? That single miss. Employers treat you the same. Out of 100 Gen Z applicants, one struggles, and suddenly all are branded lazy or entitled. The truth is, most of you are not lazy. A small minority might struggle with mental health or motivation, but social media amplifies stereotypes. Employers see a single example, then project it onto millions. Platforms magnify negativity, creating a false picture of your generation. This mood isn't unique to the West. In China, 1 in 5 Gen Zers are unemployed. The government even stopped publishing the numbers. Pressures of corporate work culture and unaffordable living drove many to the lying flat movement, echoing America's concept of quiet quitting. According to Evelyn, only about the top 5%, the highly skilled with options, can afford that choice. For the rest, survival rules. You work 10 to 11 hours daily, often beyond official duties, because necessities leave no room for quiet rebellion. So for most of you, lying flat is not realistic. But frustration is rising among the top 5% who crave balance. They demand better conditions, they push against boundaries. Meanwhile, the majority continue carrying heavy hours, driven less by ambition and more by pure survival. I asked Max, is the capitalist dream over? Not yet. The economy is harsh, but quitting entirely isn't an option. You need money. So instead, many of you perform the bare minimum. Quiet quitting or lying flat, just enough effort to survive without losing jobs. This isn't laziness, it's adaptation. If your environment punishes you with long hours, low pay, and rising costs, then conserving energy is rational. Quiet quitting isn't about giving up, it's about survival under an unforgiving system. Gen Z isn't dreaming less, it's enduring more with fewer rewards. Part of the crisis is wealth. You can't match or surpass your parents' progress. Their generation built wealth, but today's landscape blocks you. Remember how parents once complained about money? You're set to complain twice as much, because the ground beneath you keeps shifting downwards. Budget day revealed more than tax cuts. Forecasts showed living standards sinking. Real earnings are expected to stagnate until 2028. Look back, that's 20 years with no meaningful pay growth. So, you work harder, yet remain stuck, chasing stability that slips further away with every year. This is bad. You're at the age when you should be setting yourself up for stability, independence, homes, families, even kids. Yet the state of the economy makes that harder than ever. Compared to your parents, financial security feels more like an impossible dream. Our generations, Millennials and Gen Z, lack power in the workplace. Union membership collapsed, political movements lost strength, and wages failed to rise with inflation. In the UK, it has been the longest wage stagnation since the 1800s, an unprecedented setback in modern economic history. Millennials became the first generation since capitalism's rise to end up poorer than their parents. The older generation was promised stability, free education, affordable homes, jobs leading to pensions. For us and you, that dream collapsed. Homes remain unaffordable, pensions broken, retirement increasingly unrealistic. Today, costs climb because landlords, utilities, and corporations extract more profit from younger people. Wages remain stagnant because workers no longer hold bargaining power. Governments systematically weaken unions, reducing worker influence. This imbalance forces you to pay more while earning less, leaving prosperity permanently out of reach. The nature of work itself adds instability. Each generation seeks new models, but automation and artificial intelligence now accelerate uncertainty. Gen Z faces the threat of replacement at any moment. A smart system or machine can take your role overnight, removing long-term career security. That instability breeds anxiety. Instead of building predictable careers, many of you juggle short-term contracts, freelancing, or side hustles just to survive. Dreams of homes, families, and retirement are postponed or abandoned. What appears as laziness or disengagement is often simple survival within a destabilized economic system. Perception deepens the problem. Nearly 45% of Millennials and Gen Z obsess over becoming rich, yet half already feel financially behind. Around 43% of Gen Z and 41% of Millennials experience money dysmorphia, a distorted view of finances that leaves you constantly feeling inadequate and pressured. The effects are measurable. 95% say money dysmorphia damages their financial well-being. Still, many hold savings. 37% have over $10,000, while 23% hold more than $30,000. The average American has $5,300. Despite better balances, you feel poorer, anxious, and convinced of falling behind. The reality is structural. Wages remain stagnant, assets become more expensive, and financial literacy lags. Without education on money management, you risk anxiety even when stable. Real challenges exist, but better financial awareness could soften the burden, offering clarity instead of constant fear about money and stability. Education no longer guarantees advancement. College degrees, once secure tickets to jobs, now produce debt. In the United States, graduates earn 10% less than their parents did. The same model spreads worldwide. For many, education has transformed from opportunity into obligation, delivering debt instead of prosperity. Addison Rae dropped out of college, turned to TikTok, and became a multimillionaire. For many young people, this raises a question. Does higher education still hold value? Increasingly, you see examples where success seems detached from university, reflecting a broader shift in the workforce. In the UK, your parents' generation experienced a completely different reality. Higher education was free. My own mother attended Cambridge University without paying a single pound. Rising house prices and free education laid the foundation of extraordinary generational wealth that expanded across many advanced economies during those years. Today, higher education transformed into a commodity. As a student, you aren't just learning, you're treated as a consumer. Institutions demand fees, cut costs, and pursue profit. You, in turn, expect more in return, often disappointed by the transactional nature of the system now dominating universities. This marketization of education mirrors what's happening elsewhere. Goods and services once freely available or cheap at the point of use, like housing or utilities, are now commodified. The result is the same pattern. Higher costs, lower quality, and more anxiety for you, the person navigating this landscape. Historically, the logic was clear. If people were educated, housed, and supported with robust public services, they became secure, healthier, and more productive. That recognition has faded. What was once seen as essential investment in society is now reframed as individual responsibility and financial burden. In wealthier economies after the post-war period, strong labor movements fought for free education, affordable housing, and reliable public services. That made it possible for society to function better. But in much of the world, those benefits never existed, leaving entire generations simply struggling to survive. Today, survival often means juggling multiple jobs. Around 45% of Gen Z and 36% of Millennials now work a second job. For many, it's not optional. Without that extra income, supporting yourself, let alone your parents or children, quickly becomes impossible under today's rising costs. I know people working 2 jobs on weekdays and then picking up a third on weekends. They're exhausted, but they have no choice. Housing is unaffordable, medical expenses never stop, and wages are stagnant. Having multiple jobs is the only path to basic survival. What's striking is how different this is from earlier generations. Boomers could often live independently by age 20. Now, friends in their mid-20s, 26 years old, sometimes married, sometimes with kids, are still living with parents despite working 2 or 3 jobs. For them, independence feels impossible. There's no easy way to wrap this up. We wish the future looked brighter, but the reality is more uncertain than ever. Generations that were promised stability now face insecurity, overwork, and a cost of living that keeps climbing faster than wages ever could. What's clear is that these issues aren't going away. Whether it's money dysmorphia, multiple jobs, or the shifting value of education, the struggle is shaping a new reality for young people everywhere. And this story is far from finished. That's all for today. Up next, we'll look at how new technologies and shifting economies are creating unexpected opportunities, even amid instability. Because while the challenges are real, the ways young people adapt and push back might define not only their future, but society's future too.